All right. Oh, sorry. Caught me slipping. All right. Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Sorry, I'm tardy for the party. What's up? We're going through Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Last week we did chapter 8. No, we do Bible study at 7:30, actually. I'm just running crazy behind, trying to get things set up. So today we're going to be going through Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Like I always say, Ecclesiastes is probably my favorite book of the Bible. Even though, some people may feel differently. They feel like it's a little dark, a little cynical. Maybe that's why it's my favorite book. But I think it, you know, all the Bible tells the truth. I was going to say, I think it tells the truth. But I think it offers a more balanced perspective. One thing that I heard that I thought was insightful was they were talking about the book of Proverbs and kind of like how do you reconcile the optimism of Proverbs with the cynicalness of Ecclesiastes. And really, one of the things they said that I thought was interesting, kind of funny and challenging is that Proverbs is a book of Proverbs, not a book of promises. So Proverbs kind of lays out general behavioral advice and recommendations. And sometimes, a lot of times, if you follow those things, recommendations sounds like a bad word, but general guidance and wisdom in life, Proverbs lays out. And sometimes, I mean, when you follow that wisdom bears fruit. But sometimes when you follow that wisdom, it doesn't always go as planned. It doesn't always work out in your favor. Sometimes the righteous suffer things that the wicked should. And sometimes the wicked are honored when the righteous should be. And so you enter Ecclesiastes, which kind of provides I don't want to say down to earth because then I think that kind of like downplays the great insight of Proverbs, but it just brings a balanced perspective. Ecclesiastes, among other things, is a reflection of when things don't go as anticipated. And so we've been working through Ecclesiastes chapter 9. A common theme in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 has been this idea of so much of what we do is, again, we talked about meaningless in the beginning, but for lack of a better word, meaningless or vain. And so what do you do? What do you do with that? What do you do when so much of life seems vain? Well, Solomon's advice, which I think is great advice, seems to be a recurring theme of please the Lord, find toil or work that you enjoy, and hold on to and enjoy those moments of pleasure that you get out of life. Those seem to be a recurring thing that comes up throughout and will kind of come up here. So we'll start reading here in Ecclesiastes. Let me get my stuff together here. We'll start reading here in Ecclesiastes chapter 9. He starts off, verse 1 says, so all of this I laid to heart. So for the sake of clarity, we're going to start back at 16 and kind of mentally remove the chapters just to get a better seamless understanding. All right, so starting at Ecclesiastes 8. Ecclesiastes 8, starting verse 16, it says, I applied my mind to know wisdom and to understand the business that is done on the earth. How neither day nor night one's eyes see sleep. Then I saw all the work of God, Man is not able to discover the work that is done under the sun. Although a man may toil in seeking, he cannot find it out. Even if a wise man claims to know it, he cannot find it. And then continuing on in verse 9, he says, So all this I laid in my heart, and I concluded that the righteous and the wise, as well as their deeds, are in the hand of God. So no one knows anything that will come to them, whether it be love or hatred. The same fate comes to everyone. This is an interesting point that he brings up because, and he kind of touches on it before, but it's this idea that that this doesn't deserve to happen to me, that this doesn't deserve to happen to people. There's this thing that sometimes I think we do as believers, that we say if we do all the right things, then all the right things should happen. And if something that is something wrong or something that is not right happens, then it must be something wrong that I've done or the wrong of someone else. But if I do all the right things, then all the right things should happen. And we may say no, we may say we believe that, we may not. But I think sometimes in our actions, in our language, it is that type of sentiment that if I just do everything right, then everything right will happen. One of the things that Solomon says here in Ecclesiastes kind of reminds us of is that we cannot manipulate God with good, or we cannot manipulate God with obedience. So it's God, I've been out here, I've been doing all this stuff, I've been obeying you. Why haven't XYZ happened? Or why is XYZ happening? I think sometimes we may be unconsciously as believers buy into this notion that God owes us for our obedience. That because I obeyed, therefore this should happen, or this should not happen. When the obedience is really for our own good, it's not based upon trying to earn points or God owing you something because you were obedient. And so one of the things that Solomon kind of points out here and reminds us of is that in verse 1, he says, So I laid all this in my heart, and I concluded that the righteous and the wise, as well as their deeds, are in the hand of God. So no one knows what will come of them, whether it is love or hatred. For the same fate comes to everyone, to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the wicked, to the clean and to the unclean. It's again, we cannot manipulate God without obedience. We definitely need to obey. Obedience is in our best interest because we're dealing with the God of the universe who loves us, who's trying to lead and guide us. But our obedience does not equal to God now owing us something, or this thing should not happen to me because I obey God. No, life be lifing. Life's everybody. Everybody gets hit with life, and I think, and you guys can let me know if it doesn't make sense, but I think once we remove the obligation for life to be perfect, we remove the expectation that life will be perfect. We remove the expectation that we'll only deal with a certain degree of difficulty. That we'll deal with this level of difficulty, but God will make sure that we never have to deal with this level of difficulty. No, it's life hits people in different ways, and no amount of good deeds or even wisdom can protect you from life when it's lifing, And I think this is one of the things that Solomon is reminding us of And then I think it goes back to that theme then. So if my wisdom and my great deeds, there's a scripture where he says, do not seek to be overly righteous, which is like, dang, how can you be overly righteous? But there is this thing of always trying to do the right thing, or being so afraid that you'll do the wrong thing that you don't do anything, and then end up wrong for that. So there's this balance of the fact that God has accepted us as we are and who we are, but sometimes we don't accept us as we are. Like, God has accepted you not based on all the good things that you've done. He's accepted you based on his love for you. And so it's like, sometimes I feel like we struggle with accepting the full spectrum of who we are, both good and bad. And so I think it's one of the things that Solomon just encourages to embrace who we are, and then not to expect the good that we do to somehow mean that life owes us a trouble-free existence, because it just does not work out like that. To continuing on, he says, to those who sacrifice and to those who do not sacrifice, as well as with the good man, also to the sinner. As with whoever swears an oath, as with those who fear oaths. This is the injustice that is done under the sun. The same fate comes to everyone. Also, the hearts of humans are full of evil. Delusion is in their hearts during their lives, and then they die. It's a wild scripture. Going on to 4, he says, whoever is joined to all the living has hope. After all, even a live dog is better than a dead lion. Solomon he articulates something I was trying to articulate on the podcast last week, but I was listening back to it. I did a bad job. I was trying to say you can always start over, no matter what. And I feel like generally in life, like, if you are alive, if you have life in your lungs, if God's given you the ability to live, you can, and let's say, you can start again. You can keep pushing, you know what I mean? Like, again, he says better to be a live dog than a dead lion. And so it's this idea that, like, with life brings opportunity. And sometimes we spend so much time focusing on the opportunities missed that we don't really appreciate the opportunities that are still available. So even in disappointment, even in heartache, even in guilt, if you have life and air in your lungs, you still have opportunity. And I think that is a huge thing. So, verse 4. Whoever joins to living, even a live dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead do not know anything. They no longer have a reward, and even the memory of them is forgotten. What they have loved and hated, as well as what they desired, has already perished. They no longer have a share in what is done under the sun. Yeah, and it's just a sober reminder that fate awaits us all. When we first started Ecclesiastes, we were looking at a picture, like the first picture you could see, like the first video, kind of showed like the first human beings. This is like 1800 something from that tripping. And it's like, dang, like those people not only are those people gone, not only are they completely forgotten, not only do we not know who they are, but also whatever they were worried about, whatever was giving them anxiety, whatever was on the top of their mind is also gone as well. And it's just a reminder of just like, dang, life Life is fragile. It's an opportunity that I don't know if we spend enough time using and taking advantage of. I don't know if we, and definitely include myself, like I don't know if we see life as an opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, you woke up this morning. There's something that you could do with that. Like it is. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a revolutionary thing each day. But if you are alive, you have opportunity, because the day is coming where you will no longer have opportunities. The day is coming where you will no longer exist. There's day is coming where your memory, everything will be gone. Sounds dark, but I think it's a sobering and good reminder that while you have life, you have opportunity. 6, what they have hated as well as what they desire have already perished. They no longer have any share in what is done under the sun. Go, eat your food with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved your deeds. Very interesting passage, like we talked about before, which seems to come up a lot. There's this sometimes arguments about like predestination versus free will, like how much of our lives how much of our choices are really ours, or how much of our choices are already been laid out. It seems that Solomon, or the writer of Ecclesiastes, kind of sees life as already laid out before God, and already kind of laid out. He says a couple things like this before, but again, just referencing here in verse 7, he says, God has already approved your deeds. Always be clothed with white garments, and never let your head lack oil. Enjoy with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life, which is under the sun. It's like, dang, like, let us know how you really feel. Enjoy with the wife you love all the days of your vain little life. Because this is your lot in life. This is your toil with which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hands find to do it with all your might. For in Sheol, where you are going, no one works, plans, knows, or thinks about anything. There's conversation about what he means about, like, Sheol is not hell. It's like the grave. It's like this holding place. But besides that, I think it's like this, again, this passage is just a reminder, and I'm just thinking in myself, like, do we see, I'm not trying to be all, I don't know what to say, Richard Simmons. What's that dude? He's like a motivational speaker. But, I mean, do we see life as opportunity? Like, are we really taking for granted that one day this thing gonna end? And, it's gonna end. It's gonna end for us. It's gonna end for the people that we love. And, when he says to do whatever's before you with all your might, it's like, because today is all you got to do it. And you know what I mean? Like, today is all you got to do it. One of the things, like, even with, like, spending time with my kids, or like loved ones, it's like there's conversations that we sometimes assume that we can have later, or there's things that we feel like we can deal with later, or there's people who may be having arguments and finding people over stuff because they feel like, we feel like there will always be later. Well, one day there won't be later. And so whatever you have today, if, God grants us the grace to wake up in the morning and breathe, that day we should live with all our might. We should do the things that we can, the things that we know to do in that day with everything we got. And so it's just, and thinking, I know we don't like to think about death. Like some people don't like to do their will. Because I don't like talking about death because I feel like, and this is all right. This don't make no sense, but a lot of what I do don't make sense. But I just feel like, oh, he was just talking about death yesterday, and then he died. So that's why I don't like talking about death. But you know what I mean? Like some people don't like doing their will because like things around death we don't really like dealing with. But I wonder if it might be, I think we need to develop a healthier relationship with the reality that one day we will not be here. I think the fact that we avoid talking about death makes us take life for granted because we don't really sit and consider the weight of what it means that one day it will end. So it's like, we don't think about it because it makes us uncomfortable. But one day is going to be it. And so I like what we have is today. We have today to do the things that are before us with all our might, all our strength, everything we can before God. So continuing on, whatever your hands to do in verse 10, whatever your hands find to do it with all your might. For in Sheol, when you'll go and no one works, plans, knows, or thinks about anything. Uh-oh, what did I do? I don't know how to get rid of that little box. I'm not sure if y'all can see that. Boom. All right. Does anything? 11. I looked again and saw under the sun that the race. This is one of my favorite passages of Ecclesiastes. Shout out to Dave James. He turned it into a song. Time and chance. All right. Ecclesiastes 11 says, I looked again and under the sun. I looked again and saw under the sun that the race does not belong to the swift. The battle does not belong to the mighty. Food does not belong to the wise. Wealth does not belong to the intelligent. And success does not belong to the skillful. For time and chance befalls all of them. For man does not know his time. I'm gonna read this again. Because I really get what we're talking about. I looked again and saw under the sun that the race does not belong to the swift. The battle does not belong to the mighty. Food does not belong to the to the wise. Wealth does not belong to the intelligence. Success does not belong to the skillful. To me, this is interesting because I think it goes back to kind of the theme thus far and what we were just talking about, this idea that like there is opportunity. Like there's opportunity for everyone. There's opportunity in life. Like sometimes I think we, again, and let me know if it doesn't make sense, but like I think we don't realize so much of our life is kind of based on stories. And what I mean by stories is the things that we tell ourselves about life. Like, I'm not the type of person to do this. Or, that works out for them, but that doesn't work out for me. Or this always happens to me. And so that's a narrative that we get in our brain. And one of the things that are interesting about this verse in 11, he says, listen, the race does not belong to the swift. And so when you think about belong, it's like you look at certain things in life and you're like, man, they got that. That's theirs. They're obviously gonna get that. But it's like, no, like opportunity is available for us all. Wealth does not belong to the intelligence. Plenty of stupid people that are wealthy, but it's like, again, we get these narratives in our mind that are typically negative, and then we kind of follow along with that narrative. Um, and so it's like in life there is opportunity. There's opportunity. You may be slow. You can still win the race. You may be mighty. You may not be mighty. Guess what? You can still win the battle. And so it's just I think if we combine this along with the other passages before, the other things he said before, it's this reminder that listen, um, you look at life and you see the vanity of it. You see how things just don't seem to be fair. But in that vanity of life, in that things not seeming to be fair, it also means that there's opportunity for you. Because hey, you know what I mean? Like me and my wife were just talking about Paul, who persecuted Christians and probably killed them. He definitely led to believers' death. And listen, this dude got God's grace, and he did not deserve it. But he got God's grace. There are other people who were maybe walking with the Lord from jump, from one of the first disciples, and then you get into Paul, this person who formerly persecuted Christians, and now God has just blessed them. God just granted them favor, and so it's like there's a cheesy thing where people say favor ain't fair, but there's just opportunities, and I don't know if it makes sense, but it's like it shocks me the amount of things that people won't even try. Like, did you try? Did you call? Did you see? It's like the amount of things that we tell ourselves that won't work, or nah, it probably won't happen, is wild to me. It's like you gotta at least shoot your shot. You gotta at least try, because time and chance, opportunity, it happens to us all. I think everybody has more opportunity than they realize in more places than they realize it. So why not try? Why not, why not try? What is it that God may be pulling you toward that maybe you don't feel worthy of, that maybe you feel like you don't deserve, or maybe you feel nervous about? Why not try? You gotta at least try. Just as the fish are caught in a cruel snare, and net and birds are seized in the snare, so also humans are ensnared in a cruel time when it falls suddenly upon them. I have also seen this example of wisdom under the sun, and it seemed great to me. There was a small city with few people in it. A king came and besieged it, building great siege and work against it. Now a poor wise man was found in the city, and he delivered the city by his wisdom, but no one remembered that poor man. So I concluded that wisdom is better than might. Yet the wisdom of the poor is despised, and his words are not heard. I mean, and yeah, that is unfortunate. I think about the scripture in Corinthians where Paul is talking, and he's talking to the Corinthians, and he's like, yo, I've been walking with y'all this whole time, and now these other people come, and they may talk this certain way, or they deem to make themselves look more important than they really are, and then you're gonna leave me, who's been walking with you, to walk with these people. And I think that's just a reoccurring thing when I think about this story that he gives about the poor man, and he says, yet the wisdom of the poor is despised, and his words are not heard. It's amazing. This week we may be talking about on the podcast. We'll probably be talking about just like Christian influencers and the importance of the need to know the Bible or XYZ, and you know, a Christian's obligations to kind of have a strong theology. But it's like we equate riches with wisdom, which is interesting. And we equate riches with money with success, which is interesting. And I think we maybe, you know, we might do it so unconsciously, just like, yeah, what's the issue? Because to us, I sometimes, just saying, I think maybe it's like all roads leads to an American version of success. That is the ultimate form of happiness, and then everything else under that is just this kind of weird consolation prize. Like, yes, I'm poor, but I'm happy. But it's like, I think in our mind, you know, the richer a person is, then maybe the wisest, or the wiser. Or I think about like gospel rappers or like Christian artists who may be good at a certain thing. Or, you know, we just did a video talking about Kanye West not too long ago. It's like Kanye West was a great musician. He got saved. That does not mean I want to hear him preach. I'm not getting my theology from Kanye West. I don't need him on someone's stage. But there could be something of substance in that church that does not have that success riches that are kind of getting ignored. And that's what this part reminds me of here, where he says, yet the wisdom of the poor is despised, and his words are not heard. And one of the things that is interesting, and I appreciate it, but it's also difficult even trying to do a Bible study like this with Ecclesiastes, is that he doesn't really elaborate on a lot of stuff. So it's not like, you know, one of the things I think that sometimes as believers we do is like we try to put sauce on it and we try to make it like, okay, we try to read more into the text than is there, either for the sake of coming to a point or, you know, for the sake of leaving with something encouraging. But sometimes it just is what it is. And it makes it a little challenging when doing the Bible study. But I appreciate it because in Ecclesiastes, he just states obvious observations. You know what I mean? He's not like, he says, so even in this one, he's like, so I concluded that wisdom is better than might, yet the wisdom of the poor is despised and his words are not heard. You know, he doesn't necessarily turn that around into something. It's like, that is just what he's seen. And I think it's true. And I think like some things when you're reading through scripture, you just got to keep keeping your heart. 17, he says, the words of the wise are heard in peace, more than the shouting of a ruler is heard among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but a sinner destroys much good. And then we'll go on next week and dig into chapter 10 in Ecclesiastes, and then we'll work through Ecclesiastes, and then we'll go to a different book. But I think, again, Ecclesiastes, some people have this view of Ecclesiastes that it is this dark, cynical book where Solomon was just kind of deceived and he's writing. I personally, I don't find evidence for that. I don't believe that. And I think when we have that kind of supposition, that it makes us suspicious of the text when it challenges us. So if he says things that are difficult, we can easily just say, "Oh, that's just Solomon. He was tripping." But if we look at it as it is, as this is the wisest man on earth, and the richest man. He spent all of his resources trying to figure out what we should do in our lives. And this is his conclusion, that everything is vanity. And because everything is vanity, you should please God, find work that you enjoy, and find moments in life that you enjoy and hold on to them. That is, it's easier said than done, but that is a life worth living. And then throughout Ecclesiastes, as we read and as we continue to read, he does not paint this rosy picture that everything works out. He doesn't. And I think and this is why I want everybody to read Ecclesiastes, because I'm sure you guys have seen it. Like, so many times as believers, we encounter certain challenges, and it's like, man, God, how can you let this happen? Or God, how can it be this evil, or how can this happen to this righteous person? I just think if more people really encounter Ecclesiastes, they'll know that that's just life. Life be life. It's not about all the time. It's not about all the time what is fair, what is righteous. He says, I think it was even last week when we read, he said that he goes on about just the vanity of it all, but he says, but I deem that the wise is better than the fool, because at least the wise knows where he's going. So there is value in wisdom. There is value in obedience, but one of the things that he makes clear, which I appreciate, is that obedience does not somehow obligate God to protect us from all harm and disappointment. That obedience does not somehow replace the things about life that just don't make sense. That just don't add up. You know what I mean? Sometimes 2 + 2 be 4. Sometimes it be 5 in life. And sometimes things worked a certain way, and then it doesn't. And so I like Ecclesiastes because it just reminds us of that. And I think now we are at an interesting time where more and more believers, or former believers, where more and more believers are now leaving the faith and losing faith. And not all of it, I think, is because of disappointment, but I do think some of it is because of disappointment, because there's this expectation of what we think it means to be a Christian, what we think it means to follow God, and then sometimes, it just don't work out like that. So Ecclesiastes is a sober, sometimes dry reminder that life be life. And so next week we will go through Ecclesiastes chapter 10. Let's see what some of these highlights are. So also a little folly, always wisdom, and honor. If the anger of a ruler rises up against you, do not leave your posts, for calmness will not undo them. Verse 10 says, if the axe is blunt, the one does not need to sharpen. If the axe is blunt, but one does not sharpen its edge, he must exert more effort. But the advantage of wisdom brings success. Okay, I'm just going through reading some of these highlights here. We will dig through Ecclesiastes 10, and next week, the fool talks too much, for no one knows what will be. Who can tell anyone what will happen in the future? And we're shutting down here, but that just reminds me, we read that and we think of someone maybe who's talking trash and maybe carelessly saying all these things that they plan to do. But I think also in this is, again, going back to this obedience, it's I'm not going to say you're a fool. It is foolish to think that this that life owes you something, that your obedience guarantees that this thing or whatever it is will happen to you in the future. No, we need to embrace obedience. We need to operate in obedience. But again, it does not obligate life to go our way. Life will still life. Do not curse the king, even in your thoughts. Do not curse the rich, even in your own bedroom. For a bird of the sky may carry your voice, and a winged messenger may repeat your words. That's a very interesting verse. I know some people think it's like alludes to some type of like demonic thing. We will dig more into that next week. All right, so that is Ecclesiastes 10. This Thursday, we're going to be doing a Bible study. Not Bible study. We're going to be doing a podcast on how to figure out the best way to word it, but it was inspired by a conversation that happened between, I guess it was kind of a conversation, between Ruslan, Caleb, Gordon, and then I know Marcus Jones kind of commented on it. This idea like how important is theology when it comes to preaching the gospel. And I think maybe Marcus Jones might have misunderstood what they were talking about, but it at least brought up a great conversation that I think is important. I think it's extremely important. And I think sometimes as believers, like we said before, we proxy our faith, we proxy our education to people, to other people, just because, we don't want to do the work. One of the people who I like, his name is Mike Heiser. He's like he helped create the Logos, or he's like he works for Logos, the Bible software company. He's like one of the theologians there. One of the reasons why he said that he does not personally like debates, and I kind of agree with him, kind of don't, but I like his thought process is, Shun says, I can't see the screen. Which screen? Hold on one second. Because I've been going this whole time, so you can't see the screen. This whole thing was a dub. One of the things that Mike Heiser says is, Shun threw me off. Let me know if y'all can see the screen. Shun threw me off. One of the things Mike Heiser says that he doesn't like about debates is that it pushes people not to study. They just watch debates and then repeat whatever the points was in the debates. And I can definitely see that. I think we have to figure out a way to make studying the Bible, like not just reading, but studying the Bible, common practice. D-Ball, thank you, D-Ball. You see the screen. All right, maybe something just wrong with Shun. Thank you, Annie. You see the screen. Okay, come on, somebody. Something's just wrong with Shun. All right. Get your life together, Shun. All right, but anyway, we'll dig more than that. I'm going off into space, but I think it's important. I think it's an obligation for each of us to study, and then all right, we're gonna talk more about it because, and for younger believers, it's no. It is your bad. All right. Pastor Shun in the building. Yeah, and for younger believers, and this is why I want to have the conversation podcast, because we kind of have a forum to discuss it. But I remember being a younger believer, and I remember the old people treating me like I ain't know nothing. Like, oh, you just a little whippersnapper. And I remember my mentor and pastor, Pastor David, he did not treat us like we were little kids. Like the term young people, ooh, that used to bother me. It's like you're not a full person, you're just a young person. Like, what is that? So it's like you're not a full person, you're just a young person. That used to bother me. So I do remember feeling that way, and I remember Pastor Dave, he never really treated us like we were less than. I mean, he was maybe He was definitely old enough to be our fathers. I mean, we were best friends with his children. His children are like brothers to me. And he never treated us like we were kids. And I always, always, always appreciated that. But we were in real discipleship with him. Like, I was at his house every day. We were breaking out the Bible every day. Like, if there was an issue, he was correcting it. You know what I mean? Like, it was more than just a pastor relationship. It was real discipleship. So we were blessed to be kind of really discipled. But I do remember looking at the older generation and, I do remember the older generation looking at us and treating us like, man, y'all already know nothing. And then as I get older, and I'm just being honest, and this is why we want to have this conversation. As I see younger believers who are what is the word? Resourceful in using the internet. And that resourcefulness in using the internet kind of escalates their voice. It's like I feel myself becoming that old person that's like, you gotta get some years under your belt. And not that years equal wisdom, but you know the zeal and the idealizing, if that is the word, of what it means to be a Christian that sometimes you have when you're younger. And I know a lot of younger believers that have loved God, been on fire with God, been on fire for God, but the older that they got, as they left their parents' home, as they left the cocoon of Christendom, and the more questions that they got, the more difficult that it became, and more of them begin to kind of walk away from the faith. And so it's like there is power in the testing of time, the testing of disappointment. And being humbled, and there's power in that, and being humbled, and sometimes that humbleness comes in the form of experiences. Like, it's a bunch of stuff that I believed when I was younger that I do not believe now. But it's like, but we live in a world that it's easier to get platformed. So it's like you have these younger people who are zealous about God, but don't really have a desire to or see value in like really studying scripture, but they have voices. It's just a balance. I don't think that they should. It's just like, what do you do? I don't want to be that old person that like treats people like, oh, you don't know nothing. Because I remember what that felt like, and that sucked. And I remember thinking, freak you. Y'all the ones who freaked up Christianity anyway. And so, and so I don't want to be that old person, but I do think that there is wisdom in experience. There's wisdom in time. And, who's to say what that looks like? But those are the things that we'll kind of be throwing around, just that conversation of like, is it, I can never pronounce this word, death, D-E-P-T-H, death, in Christianity. I think, we need more of that. Just because someone can sing or work at TikTok does not mean that they should be teaching the scripture. But maybe I'm just an old hater. Who knows? But those are the things that we'll be talking about this Thursday at 9 o'clock with the guys. Yes. So, all right. Appreciate you guys. We're going through Ecclesiastes. Like I said, I don't know if you feel this way. I feel this way. I feel like some parts of Ecclesiastes, dry is a strong word, but I think like one of the things that I am adamant about is that you should not impose your cultural views, your beliefs, what you want onto scripture. And so it's like, I think sometimes we do that unconsciously, and we try to add more than is there, and and sometimes it's a lot there, and sometimes it's just pretty straightforward. I think Ecclesiastes is interesting because, to me, sometimes it's a lot there, and then sometimes it is pretty straightforward. And so, and doing those parts that is pretty straightforward, or may not even clear at that moment, I think we got to be okay with just holding on to that, and then later, as we read through, certain things may come back to us. And so I think that's just a good principle in Bible study, period. If you don't know something, look it up and try to really understand not your current cultural context, but the cultural context in which Scripture was written. And I think it allows us to better understand what it is that Scripture is saying in order to obey it. And I think that's some of the conversations that we'll have on Thursday, because I think that happens a lot. It's like, this is what it means to me. Okay, well, guess what? Frequent it means to you. We need to figure out what it means. And then once you figure out what it means, the question is, what does it mean for us? What is the obligation to what I just read and understand? Not what does what I read and understand mean to me, because it can mean something different to somebody else. And I think for so long, Scripture has become this thing where you can just make it whatever you want it to be. It's like, to me, being a disciple means this. To me, being a disciple means that. It's like, no, when Jesus told them to go out to the world and to make disciples, they were not like, what is that? Or they were not like, what does disciple mean to me? No, they knew exactly what it was that he was asking them to do, because they knew what a disciple was. And it's the same thing with faith. When you talk about when the Scripture talks about being saved by faith, or Jesus says your faith has made you well. No one in all the Scripture, I could be tripping, has ever stopped Jesus and said, what is faith? I've never heard of this new thing you invented called faith. No, they knew what faith was. And so when he says that your faith has made you well, they knew what he was saying. So the question for us is, okay, what is the understanding that they had about faith when he said that? What is faith? Not what is it to me? And then once I find out what it is, now what is my obligation to the thing that I just read? But anyway, I said I was leaving, then I started to ramble on. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. All that and some more we'll be digging into Thursday at 9 o'clock on the podcast. Peace and blessings. Without any further ado, we are out.